appears to be insufficient knowledge on developing 21st century skills, including higher order thinking skills among learners. The current state of basic education behooves us all to take a courageous stand and calls us to work together with the intention and commitment to resolve the challenges in basic education.
That was Vice President Sara Duterte delivering the DepEd's Basic Education Report for 2023. We will look into that later in the program. From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. The big story tonight.
The Education Department says it will revise the K-12 curriculum in a bid to produce more competent and job-ready Filipinos.
In its 2023 Basic Education Report, the agency admitted to flaws in the country's education system and vowed systematic changes. Here's what we know. Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte says the ongoing review of the K-12 curriculum revealed that first, the curriculum content is congested. Second, that some prerequisites of essential learning competencies are missing or misplaced. And third, that a significant number of learning competencies cater to high cognitive demands. Though tested data showed a high passing rate in their work immersion program, Duterte says most senior high school graduates find a need to pursue higher education. Citing data from the Bureau of Curriculum Development, Duterte says 83% of senior high school graduates pursued higher education, while only 10% were employed. Industry partners also expressed concern that the time allotted for work immersion is only for familiarization and not actual skills acquisition. Now, aside from low employability, Duterte says their assessment of the K-12 curriculum showed that teachers have weak teaching methods of the 21st century skills. She also noted that although critical thinking was evident in the curriculum, it was also the least taught to students by teachers. However, the Education Secretary said this is not the fault of teachers, but rather of the system.
This is not the fault of our teachers. The sad reality is the system has failed them. This is a system that burdens them with backbreaking and time-consuming administrative tasks. A system that provides no adequate support and robs them of the opportunity to professionally grow and professionally teach, assist, and guide our learners.
Citing data from the Program for International Students Assessment, or PISA, DepEd stresses that 81% of Filipino students could not deal with basic math problems. 81% say they had trouble understanding text of moderate length, while 78% could not recognize explanations for scientific phenomena. Secretary and Vice President Duterte described the results as alarming. But the Vice President says the most pressing issue faced by the education sector today is the lack of school infrastructure and resources. The agency's latest inventory shows that only about 100,000 of the more than 300,000 school buildings in the country are in good condition. She says schools are also not calamity-proof, and she cited damage to schools caused by recent typhoons and earthquakes. This year, Duterte says the agency has the budget to build around 6,000 classrooms.
We can do better than this. And we Filipinos are better than this. But studies like these are opportunities for us to thoroughly examine our system and the defects that hurt our children's abilities. We fail, and our children will fail.
ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro says bills aiming to respond to the growing problems of the education sector remain pending at the lower house.
Castro says political will and support from Duterte are needed to pass these important bills. Now, to talk more about the state of the country's education sector, we have on the show Dino Busilig, lead convener of the National Teachers Association of the Philippines. Welcome to the big story, sir.
Yes po, magandang gabi po Sir Robbie and Ma'am Gretchen. Thank you po for the opportunity to be part of your program.
Sir,
Yes po.
wala naman po talagang nagulat sa iniulat ni Vice President and Education Secretary Sara Duterte, but she also mentioned a lot of problems na matagal na natin pinag-uusapan. Both the system, as well as the content, and for that matter, resources. So, saan po natin umpisahan?
So sa amin po bilang mga guro, So isa po sa naging nakita namin doon sa Basic Education Report of our DepEd Secretary, So nasabi po niya lahat ng mga kinakailangang i-improve para sa ating Department of Education. So yung pong K-12 review, yung sa infrastructure or the school facilities, yung mga inclusive education ng ating mga indigenous people, and yung result po ng ating PISA, So ito pong mga bagay na to, tayo po ay natutuwa sapagkat sa pagkakataon pong ito ay mismong ang DepEd Chief po ang nag-admit o tinanggap niya kung ano po yung mga kakulangan sa Department of Education. Kasi po kami po bilang mga guro dito po sa baba o mga frontliners of education, common po na problem lalo na po although matagal pa. Kapag opening ng klase ay sinasabi na maayos ang lahat, na okay po ito, na ready po kami. But unfortunately, nakita natin dun sa report talaga na meron pong malaking kakulangan. At ito po ay, maganda po ito, na sinasabi ng ating mismong DepEd Chief na ito yung mga kinakaharap natin na problema. These are the state of the education sector sa ating bansa. And also, ang meron lang ilang mga bagay doon na sinasabi natin na maganda ang sa pandinig ng mga guro, Pero yung tayo ay tawagin na lifeblood of education, ang gandang pakinggan, but of course, marami rin pong mga bagay na hinihingi o kumbaga ay kailangang maibigay sa ating mga guro. Although priority natin ang ating mga learners, of course, sila ang sentro ng ating edukasyon, but of course, we cannot give the basic services, basic education services sa ating mga estudyante kung yung lifeblood, ay hindi nabibigyan ng tamang atensyon, kung ano yung mga kinakailangan. But we appreciate, the DepEd Chief, sa pag-mention niya nung iba't ibang mga non-salary benefits sa kanyang matatag agenda, sinabi po niya doon yung free annual physical check-up, yung teaching overload, and then yung sa benefit packages sa GSIS, yung special hardship allowance na mention niya, and then even free legal assistance sa ating mga kasamahang guro, ay napakaganda po ng mga bagay na to.
Sir Dino,
sana ito po,
nababanggit
sana po,
niyo po,
itong mga bagay na ito ay patuloy po na maibigay sa atin ng Department of Education. So yun po. And siyempre, yun pong yes ma'am.
Nabanggit nyo nga po itong mga administrative support na kailangan po ninyo. Pero ano po kaya yung tugon po ninyo dun po sa sinabi po ng ating Vice President na medyo may weak teaching methods nga daw po that do not address the new realities in education. Pagdating naman po sa content, ano po kaya yung mga kakulangan o yung maaari nating ma-improve? Because one of the things that we're looking at now is sapat nga ba yung K-12 para maging employable yung mga graduates ng senior high school?
Yes, Ma'am Gretchen. So yung pong point na ano yung kakulangan, I could say that the professional development for teachers are very needed in line with the curriculum or the K-12 curriculum. So that's why, sabi nga niya, it's not the fault of the teacher, the system failed us. So, ibig sabihin, kailangang ayusin yung sistema para mailinya po yung kinakailangang mga teaching approaches, teaching strategies na magiging akma sa magiging pagtuturo ng mga guro. So alam po naman natin that the K-12 naging mabilis yung pagpasok po nito, and dapat lamang na naihanda ang mga guro sa pagtuturo ng mas mataas na high school academics sa ating mga minamahal ng mga estudyante. Ma'am? So yun po, we are still looking we are looking forward na maging mabigyan ng ating mga guro, kami pong mga guro, ng sapat na professional development and programs para higit naming mapagbuti yung kanyang tinutukoy doon sa kanyang mensahe at report.
Mr. Busilig, kumustahin ko naman po ang ating mga guro na parati natin pinag-uusapan. But alam niyo naman po, mga ilang taon na rin nagdaan na yung mga guro natin nagpupunta sa ibang bansa, nahihikayat na magtrabaho sa ibang bansa. Ngayon, lalo nung panahon ng pandemya, nakita na naman natin yan. Kamusta po ang katatayuan ng ating mga guro? Lalong-lalo na pinag-uusapan natin ang pay, ang salary, pinag-uusapan natin ang benefits. Are we offering enough?
Yes, Sir Robbie, tama po kayo. Among all Asian countries, one of the lowest paid teachers ay naandito po sa ating bansa, nasa Pilipinas. And sa dami po ng mga reports at mga administrative tasks na ibinibigay sa mga guro, ang kulang na lang po ay ang time nila para magturo. So dapat po tayo bilang narito po we are looking na mabigyan ng enough salary. Na ito ay against doon sa cost of living. Na sa ngayon po marami po kaming mga kasamahan at babalitaan ng mga guro talaga na pumupunta po sa mga kalapit na bansa kasi mas mataas po ang salary doon sa mga bansa po na yon. And tama po kayo, we can only give the job satisfaction and fulfillment to our teachers kung tama ang pagtrato, tama ang salary, the remuneration na dapat nabibigay sa mga guro kasi embedded po ito sa constitution that the teachers those in the educational institution must have job fulfillment and satisfaction through right remuneration. At ito po ay nasa constitution natin.
Okay,
yun po, sir.
Maraming salamat, Dino. That was Dino Busilig, lead convener of the National Head Teachers Association of the Philippines.
In other news, expect a big-time price hike in LPG in February. Based on initial projections, the price increase for an 11-kilogram LPG tank could likely hit more than 1,000 pesos soon. The hike in LPG prices follows the back-to-back weeks of oil price increases as a result of higher demand in the global market. Meanwhile, with petroleum prices on the rise, the Transportation Department is looking to provide fuel subsidies to jeepney, bus, and UV Express drivers. The government has allocated 3 billion pesos for these subsidies, the rollout for which is still being finalized. The DOTR is also seeking clearer guidelines on the release of subsidies whenever oil prices hit a certain level in the world market.
Hindi natin masabi kung tataas ulit ang presyo ng produktong petrolyo itong third at saka fourth quarter. Ito yung ating pinag-aaral ngayon para pag dumating man yung pagkakataon na yun, may mahihila pa rin ang gobyerno para may pangtustos sa ating mga drivers at operators.
Meanwhile, more than a dozen people were hurt after an LPG tank exploded in Manila on Monday. Residents of Barangay 708 in Malate were out on their usual business last night when the laundry shop exploded. At least 16 people were rushed to the hospital after sustaining burns and wounds from shattered glass panels. Authorities say the LPG that exploded was being used to power the laundry shop's dryer. According to fire officials, the laundry shop did not have a fire safety inspection permit. The Bureau of Fire Protection is urging establishments using flammable equipment to make sure that a professional technician oversees the installation process.
As per record po, wala pong na-issue ang Manila Fire District na valid fire safety inspection certificate. Bago sila mag-operate, seek fire safety inspection certificate from the BFP to make sure na yun ay pumasa sila sa mga fire safety measures natin as prescribed in the Fire Code of the Philippines.
Coming right up, President Bongbong Marcos has signed an executive order adopting a development blueprint that aims to bring the Philippines back to a high-growth trajectory. We'll get some more insights on that from Roelano Briones of the Philippine Institute for Development Studies when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News. Story here on One News. President Bongbong Marcos has signed an executive order approving and adopting the Philippine Development Plan for the period 2023 to 2028. But what exactly is this development plan? Here's what we know. Under EO number 14, signed January 27, the development plan aims to bring back the country to a high-growth trajectory and, more importantly, enable economic and social transformation for a prosperous, inclusive, and resilient society. Now, the plan is anchored on Ambisyon Natin 2040, a 25-year plan that envisions a prosperous, high-trust, and middle-class Philippine society where the people are healthy and educated, among other goals.
The plan contains strategies and policies aimed at achieving the goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, or President Marcos' 8-point socio-economic agenda. This aims to reinvigorate job creation and accelerate poverty reduction while addressing the issues brought on by the pandemic. The executive order also directs all national government agencies, government-owned and controlled corporations, government financial institutions, other government offices and corporate entities, state universities and colleges, and local government units to adopt and disseminate the PDP 2023-2028. They're also directed to align their budgets and departments or corporate programs with the strategies and activities identified in the PDP 2023-2028. Formulation of the PDP must be completed by the first quarter of 2023, updated annually or when deemed necessary by NEDA. Here to give us their insights on the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, we have live via Zoom Roelano Briones, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Good evening. Welcome to The Big Story, sir.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
Sir, two parts. So the first question, how do you feel about our targets? But I guess more importantly, how do you feel about the hows of how we're going to achieve those targets?
These development plans, ever since being prepared by the National Economic Development Authority, to which my institute, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, is actually attached. They have a very common thread running through of economic development and a set of basic strategies, poverty reduction, and so on and so forth, na meron naman basic continuity from plan to plan. At the same time, you would see some changes in emphasis. So for instance, in this current plan, although nandiyan na rin sa previous plans yan, yung protection of capabilities nakasaad. Maybe because it's recognizing new realities like coming from the pandemic. Marami tayong challenges ngayon sa educational sector, halimbawa. Sa agricultural sector, which falls under the part of economy, mayroon ng additional stress on food systems and value chains, both development and resiliency, and so on and so forth. So I think there have been recognition in the current version of the PDP of the new realities, both domestic and global, confronting the Philippines today.
Yes, but every time we develop a development plan, whether it's medium term or over the long term, what tradition, you mentioned na parati naman may continuity, these provide for continuity. But what traditionally are the gaps? What do we time and again find are the gaps and the stumbling blocks to actually achieving everything that we set out to do?
All right, so time and again, So this, the usual gap is not the plan, in my impression, but the implementation, and being able to achieve targets according to the strategies laid forth in the plan. So we can compare the report of the NEDA itself, annually prepared, yung annual socioeconomic report, versus the plan, and doon naka-note yung both hits and misses in terms of being on target with respect to the plan. Because you can actually make an assessment, At the end of each chapter may results matrix, and at the end of the document, merong monitoring and evaluation. So you can really track whether na-achieve, and to a large extent, because of implementation gaps largely, historically, dun nakikita yung problema dun sa ating mga, not really the plan, but the execution of the plan.
Well, sir, it's always good to set high targets, but we see here that the Marcos administration is targeting an upper middle income economy. Is that realistic to achieve that by 2028?
I think it's quite realistic because although there are short-term challenges, especially may looming threat of a global recession in 2023, we are coming from a relatively fast recovery, 2 years straight. But although that is under threat, I think we can keep back on track and then grow our per capita income higher than what it was before the pandemic. And if that is on track, then certainly it's feasible that we will reach. We're actually at the borderline now of lower middle income status. So it's quite reasonable to reach upper middle income status by 2028 if the trends we have seen in the last couple of years are within range of what really happens.
Kanina, we were just talking about the education report of Vice President Sara Duterte, and she, of course, emphasized the need to reform the K-12 program and to bring the skills of our of our children and the next generation of Filipino workers up to what is needed in the 21st century. Talk to us also about how crucial our education sector is and the reform needed there to make sure that we are, in fact, equipped human resource-wise, given all the targets that we have, both in the short term and in the long term.
So a set of assessments, some of them coming from PIDS itself, have flagged enormous gaps that were critically worsened, with the long school closures in the last 1.5 years, brought about by the pandemic. And then the dangers of the scarring. Ibig sabihin, malalim yung sugat at nagkakaroon ng piklat, rather than completely mahilom. So with that, I think it's very urgent. The education sector is probably the top priority now na kailangan ayusin at ma-restore yung mga initially expected outcomes for the learning, especially of the youngest group, yung mga primary school. Kasi without that primary school outcome achievement, it cascades down to secondary and even tertiary. Especially now in a world na knowledge economy, and then you have a bunch of 10-year-olds in the country, 9/10 daw, na cannot really interpret one page of text correctly. That is really alarming.
Okay, Mr. Briones, maraming salamat po. Roelano Briones, Senior Research Fellow at the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. The big story will return. Keep it here on One News.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
Today marks the 7th day of the search for the missing Cessna 206 plane and its 6 passengers in Isabela. To ramp up the search, personnel from the PNP Special Action Force have joined the operations. The PNP SAF team deployed to the mountainous part of Barangay Sinapit to help search for the light plane, Improved weather condition has finally allowed the Philippine Air Force to send out choppers to comb through the Sierra Madre in Macunacon and Divilican. In total, more than 200 rescuers are now deployed in Site Alpha. That's the area where the aircraft is seen to be located. Authorities say operations they are conducting remain to be at the search and rescue level.
Hindi kami suko, hindi kami titigil. Sabi ko nga doon sa nanay nung dalawang batang pasahero, 5 araw na, maawa ka naman doon sa mga anak ko. Sabi niya, sa 10 years old lang, maawa ka naman. Sabi ko sa kanya, alam mo ba ang turing ko doon sa mga anak mo parang yung mga anak ko na rin, na anak ko na kailangan hanapin ko at iligtas ko. Sabi ko kaya, huwag ka mag-alala, hindi kami titigil. Naiyak ako.
And before we go, we'd like to extend a warm welcome to our new bosses in Signal and TV5. MediaQuest announced the appointment of Jane Basas as President and CEO of Signal TV. She concurrently serves as President and CEO of MediaQuest, the holding company of TV5 and Signal. Now, joining the Kapatid Network is Guido Zaballero, who will sit as the new President and CEO of TV5. Mr. Zaballero will take on the post effective February 1 upon the retirement of Robert P. Galang, who led Signal TV and TV5 since 2020. Again, congratulations to Ms. Jane and Sir Guido. Welcome to Signal and TV5.
Mga boss.
Mukhang maraming magbabago.
Ha?
Maraming pagbabago, maraming aabangan, marami raw pakulo.
Ganun
Sabi.
ba?
Oo.
May tiwala naman tayo sa
Sweldo
mga boss.
natin, hindi
Parate.
magbabago.
Boss.
Ay, sorry.
That's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star and Business World online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more analysis. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play app. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. Ako po si Gretchen Ho. Stay safe, Philippines.
And we are One News, all sides, all the time.